Hey guys, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about Vivian Shaw's Bitter Waters, an arc I received from Orbit, and it's going to drop on June 25th, 2024, based on whenever you're going to watch this. I think it'll be like, this should go live like 2 weeks before the release date. But yeah, in one line, Vivian Shaw's Bitter Waters is everything I love about her trilogy distilled into an absolutely wonderfully engaging novella. It's also a surprise return because like I was under the impression that this was a completed trilogy, and then out of the blue I saw this pop up, this novella, and it turns out that in addition to this novella, she's also agreed to written a fourth novel in the series, and it's now going to end on a quartet. And it's been done a few years now, so to say this was out of the blue is an understatement, but it's a very good surprise because I really enjoyed Vivian Shaw's Greta Van Helsing trilogy. So and this novella is a bite-sized reminder of why we do. So what is Bitter Waters about? So when Barrow White shows up on Greta and Varney's doorstep, they think it's the scariest thing they're gonna see all night. But that's before she reveals what she's brought to them to seek their help with. And it's a 10-year-old child who's been recently turned into a vampire. It's a despicable act, a despicable, horrific act that unleashes a manhunt for the culprit. And on this manhunt, they get help from a very surprising source. But the tragedy of what's occurred to this child remains to be addressed. And it's going to take Greta, Varney, Lord Ruthven, and Grisel all to come to a satisfying way of dealing with this entire situation. So, like I mentioned, I enjoyed Vivian Shaw's Greta Van Helsing trilogy. It's a trilogy that came out during that trend a few years back where fantasy of manners was a big thing. So we got like these deep character-driven novels that where characters were a bit more aristocratic in their comportment, and the novels were all about the novels were very heavily character and interaction driven, and like the plot kind of occurs as a backdrop, and it's very much the same happening in this novella with the entire manhunt for this child playing out in the background, and the entire story is more about the interaction between our cast of characters who are all characters from the initial trilogy, and it's just wonderful writing. It's just wonderful writing. What else can I say about this? We have I actually made a note here that I want to read, and I'll just drop it out. So in this outing, we have the team banding together as London's self-appointed supernatural guardians in the most outlandish, unbelievable, fantastical element of this novel, and that is. By the way, this is a novel full of vampires out of classic literature, but the most fantastical, unbelievable element of this entire story is private rich people who care about the greater good of common citizens. For me, hot take. But yeah, in this case, they have to address this horrifying situation that's appeared on their doorstep, quite literally, of this child, and it's non-consensual. The child obviously didn't want this to happen, and the consequences of turning a child this young are barely known because it's never done. It enraged everyone for a reason. It's never done, so the medical consequences are unknown at this point, which is something Dr. Greta Van Helsing has to kind of address. So after the team runs through the gamut of emotions at this situation, they kind of settle in and bring the child into their circle, and they start to kind of work with her and help her understand her situation, get her through the entire turning process. And it kind of brings me to the first thing I liked about this particular book, and it's the way that the child Lucy Ashton is portrayed. Children are in stories where adults take children in stories where adults take the lead role. They tend to play very minor, very inconsequential characters unless they have something major to contribute to the plot. And in this case, Vivian Shaw gives us a slightly different take on the child in this story. She's a very resilient person. She handles this situation with a lot of grace. I think more grace than most people would handle a horrifying situation of this nature. And it especially when she has the right support system around her, which the team is in this case. Like they as the novel progresses, we kind of find out Lucy kind of has to come to terms with what happened to her, and we start to learn that we start to find out that her interaction with the supernatural is not necessarily the worst thing that's ever happened to her, because she's been a foster child, and as the team interacts with her, they realize just how terrible a situation she's been in at the hands of humans. So to summarize it, she's lived a life so far that very few could describe as privileged or enviable. Like her disappearance is chalked up as her being a runaway instead of the possibility even considered that she was kidnapped or murdered or something. And it's a great setup for given the way that the novella is going to progress. And she forms these bonds with the team naturally, that with the new support system that she's discovered, and in that process she finds family. There's a little twist on that there, but I'm not gonna share what. Needless to say, it's not what you think. But as with the previous books in this trilogy, Vivian Shaw just continues to delight me in just her proficiency as a writer, and just her absolute knowledge and love of like classic horror literature that just comes across in these books and these characters. Like I read a lot, so it's rare for me to encounter a new word that I've never encountered before, but I did meet at least one in this book. There is another one, but I can't say it without it being like a major spoiler. But yeah, I had to Google it because it's a title, and it's a title I've never read anywhere before. But as soon as you Google that title and see what it's associated with, you know immediately who you're dealing with. And for me, that particular individual becoming involved in this story, like my shock and awe was about as much as some of the other characters involved in here. But yeah, all in all, absolutely wonderful novella. It's a great taste of why we love the Greta Van Helsing series, and I think it's worth checking out if you're a fan of the series, if you're a fan of like the whole Fantasy of Manor shtick, if you're a fan of like fiction that incorporates characters from classic literature, and if you just like fantasy in general, it's a pretty good book. I enjoyed myself tremendously, and if you want to check this out, it will be available on June 25th, 2024. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.